I trusted my business partner with everything: money, time, plans for the future. He stole my idea, registered the company in his name, and threw me out, leaving me with nothing. But he didn't know that he had signed not only my termination, but also his own sentence. I met Matthew Wilson during my second year at MIT. We were both computer science majors with big dreams, but completely different personalities. While I spent weekends coding and developing prototypes, Matt was networking at parties and charming everyone he met. We balanced each other perfectly. My technical skills and his people skills created a synergy that felt unbeatable. After graduation, we both landed decent jobs at competing tech firms in Boston, but we'd meet for beers every Thursday to discuss our true passion: revolutionizing cloud security with a proprietary algorithm I'd been developing since our senior year. I called it Guardian, and it could detect intrusion patterns that existing systems missed entirely. "Alex, this isn't just good," Matt said one night, his eyes gleaming with excitement as I showed him my latest test results on my laptop. "This is game-changing. We could build a company around this." I hesitated. "I've got the technical side figured out, but I don't know the first thing about raising capital or marketing." Matt leaned forward, his charismatic smile spreading across his face. "That's where I come in. Your brains, my business savvy. We could be millionaires in 3 years." 3 months later, we quit our jobs and launched Sentinel Security Solutions. I emptied my modest savings account and took out a second mortgage on my condo. Matt contributed too, but significantly less. He argued that his network of potential investors and business connections constituted a non-monetary contribution of equal value. I trusted him. The first year was exhilarating and exhausting. We worked out of my living room, surviving on ramen and coffee. I refined Guardian's code until it was flawless while Matt scheduled meetings with potential investors and clients. By the 18-month mark, we had secured seed funding, moved into a real office in Cambridge, and hired 3 employees. "We need to formalize things," Matt suggested as our company grew. "Legal structure, equity distribution, all that boring stuff. I've got a buddy from college who's a corporate attorney. He can hook us up for cheap." I barely looked up from my monitor. "Sure, whatever you think is best. Just give me the papers and I'll sign them." That was my first mistake. The documents Matt's friend prepared listed us both as co-founders, but with a complex management structure that, in retrospect, gave Matt controlling interest. I was so focused on perfecting our product that I barely skimmed the paperwork before signing. Our big break came when TechCrunch featured us in an article about promising security startups. Suddenly, venture capitalists were calling Matt, not the other way around. We landed a series of funding round of $3.5 million. Matt hired more salespeople and marketing experts, his people. Meanwhile, I built a small engineering team, my people. 2 distinct cultures emerged within our growing company. Matt's side wore button-downs and spoke in buzzwords, my side preferred hoodies and communicated in code. The division didn't bother me at first. We were making progress, and our client list was growing. I noticed small changes gradually. Matt began scheduling important investor meetings when I was deep in debugging sessions. He'd apologize afterward: "Sorry, man. It couldn't be rescheduled, and I know how you hate being pulled away from coding." He started referring to himself as the CEO in interviews, while I was labeled CTO, titles we had never formally discussed. One Friday afternoon, about 3 years into our venture, I was working late as usual. Our product had just hit version 2.0, and customer feedback was overwhelmingly positive. I decided to check our corporate account to see if the latest client payments had cleared. We were expecting a significant cash infusion. My login credentials were rejected. Assuming it was a system glitch, I texted Matt, "Hey, can't access the bank portal. Is it down?" My phone rang almost immediately. Matt's voice was oddly formal. "Alex, we need to talk. Can you meet me for breakfast tomorrow at Riverside Cafe?" What's going on with the account? Did we get hacked? The irony wasn't lost on me, a security company experiencing a security breach. A long pause. No, nothing like that. Just, let's talk tomorrow, okay? I barely slept that night. Something felt deeply wrong. The next morning, Matt was already at the cafe when I arrived, dressed impeccably in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He wasn't alone, a woman in a business suit sat beside him, a leather portfolio in front of her. "This is Sharon Patel," Matt said as I sat down. "She's our new chief legal officer." Our new what? I hadn't been consulted about any C-level hires. "Alex," Matt continued, his voice steady but his eyes not quite meeting mine. "The board and I have been discussing the company's direction, and we believe some restructuring is necessary." "What board?" I asked, confusion mounting. "We don't have a board yet." Matt and Sharon exchanged glances. "The board was established after our last funding round," she explained. "As per the corporate bylaws." "What bylaws?" "Matt, what's happening?" He slid a document across the table. "We're streamlining leadership. The company needs a clear, singular vision to move forward." I scanned the paper. It was a termination notice. My termination. This is a joke, right? I looked up at Matt, waiting for him to break into laughter, to tell me this was some elaborate prank. His expression remained impassive. "It's not personal, Alex. It's business. You'll receive a severance package, of course." "Severance package?" "I founded this company. This is my algorithm, my code." Sharon interjected smoothly. "Actually, according to the employment contract and intellectual property agreements, all work performed belongs to Sentinel Security Solutions, which is now legally under Mr. Wilson's majority control." My head was spinning. "Matt, we started this together. In my living room. You can't just—" "I'm not doing this to hurt you," he interrupted. "The investors want accountability, a clear chain of command. They're uncomfortable with our dual leadership model. So you decided to throw me out? Without even talking to me first?" Matt finally looked directly at me. "It's already done, Alex. The board voted yesterday. Your access has been revoked, and your company email will be deactivated by end of day. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings from the office." Security. Our security. The people I had hired and trained would now be escorting me out. "You son of a bitch," I whispered. Matt stood up, buttoning his jacket. "I'm truly sorry it ended this way. I hope someday you'll understand this was for the best." He placed an envelope on the table. "Your severance details. It's generous." I watched them leave, too shocked to move, too betrayed to speak. The envelope sat untouched as I tried to process what had just happened. My company. My code. My partner. All gone in a 5-minute conversation over untouched breakfast. I don't remember leaving the cafe or walking the 15 blocks back to my apartment. I only remember the hollow feeling in my chest, the numbness that spread through my body. For a week, I barely left my bed. I ignored calls from my parents, from the few friends I had outside work. I ordered takeout that sat uneaten by my door. The betrayal consumed me like a physical illness. Then something shifted. I was scrolling mindlessly through news when I saw it. Sentinel Security Solutions announces major partnership. The article featured a photo of Matt shaking hands with the CEO of one of the largest financial institutions in the country. The quote beneath read, "This breakthrough security protocol was my vision from day one," said Matthew Wilson, founder and CEO of Sentinel. Founder. His vision. Something inside me hardened. The despair crystallized into something else, determination. I showered for the first time in days, shaved, and opened my laptop. If Matt thought he could erase my contribution, he was wrong. If he believed he could steal my work without consequences, he was about to learn otherwise. First, I needed to understand exactly what had happened legally. I used my severance money to hire Patricia Gonzalez, a razor-sharp intellectual property attorney recommended by a former classmate. They'd been planning this for at least a year, Patricia told me after reviewing the documents I'd signed. These corporate structures, the management provisions, they're designed specifically to dilute your control while maintaining the appearance of partnership. Can we fight it? She hesitated. We could, but litigation would be lengthy and expensive. And frankly, these contracts are airtight. Matt's attorney knew exactly what they were doing. So I've lost everything. Not necessarily. She pointed to a section in one of the early agreements. You registered the initial algorithm personally before the company was formed, correct? I nodded. It was just a precaution. I never thought I'd need to. That might be our leverage. While the improvements and implementations belong to the company, the core algorithm could still be yours personally. A glimmer of hope. What does that mean practically? It means they might be operating on borrowed time. They can use what they have now, but any substantial changes might require your authorization. And there's something else. Did you maintain any personal copies of the original code? I thought back to my old habit of backing up projects on an encrypted external drive, something I'd started after losing a semester's work to a crashed hard drive in college. I might have. I need to check. Patricia smiled for the first time. Do that. And in the meantime, don't contact Matt or anyone at Sentinel. Don't sign anything else. And most importantly, don't talk about this with anyone. That night, I dug through storage boxes until I found my old backup drives. There it was, Guardian, version 0.9, the last iteration before we officially formed the company. It wasn't the polished product Sentinel was now selling, but it was the heart of it, the core innovation that made everything else possible. I also found something else, my original notebooks containing the conceptual development, dated and witnessed by my former academic advisor when I'd shown him my thesis project. Evidence that this was my creation, conceived before Matt was ever involved. For the next few months, I lived a double life. On the surface, I appeared to be moving on. I interviewed for positions at other tech companies, maintained a social media presence that suggested I was exploring new opportunities. I even sent Matt a carefully worded email, no hard feelings. These things happen in business. Good luck with Sentinel. Behind the scenes, I was executing a meticulous plan. First, I approached Chimera Technologies, Sentinel's main competitor, not with an offer to work for them, but with a proposal to consult on a next-generation security framework. I was careful, I didn't use any code that could be claimed by Sentinel, but I applied the same principles, the same innovative approach that had made Guardian successful. This is impressive, said Diane Zhang, Chimera's head of R&D, after reviewing my proposal. But won't Sentinel come after you with non-compete claims? My attorney has reviewed my agreements thoroughly, I explained. As long as I'm not using their proprietary code, which I'm not, I'm in the clear. Besides, I'm not joining as an employee. I'm an independent consultant. Diane seemed satisfied. How soon can you start? Yesterday. For 6 months, I worked 18-hour days developing what would become Aegis, a security protocol that not only matched Guardian's capabilities but surpassed them. I incorporated all the improvements I had conceptualized but hadn't had time to implement at Sentinel, plus new innovations inspired by what I'd learned from Guardian's limitations. Meanwhile, Matt was riding high. Sentinel had gone through another funding round, valuing the company at $75 million. They'd moved to luxurious offices in downtown Boston. Matt was featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, described as a visionary who single-handedly revolutionized cybersecurity. He bought a waterfront condo and a Tesla. His Instagram showed him at exclusive industry events, arm around celebrities, living the tech wunderkind dream. Not once did he acknowledge my contribution to Sentinel's success. In interviews, he referred to his creation, his algorithm, his journey from concept to market domination. Each mention fueled my determination. Aegis was completed in record time. Chimera implemented it across their client network, quietly at first, then with increasing confidence as it proved its superiority. While Sentinel had been focused on publicity and expansion, I had been focused on innovation. The first cracks in Matt's facade appeared 8 months after my ousting. A major client reported a security breach that Guardian failed to detect, an evolving threat variant that my Aegis protocol would have caught easily. Then another client reported similar issues. I monitored the situation from afar, watching Sentinel's stock take minor hits with each report. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to raise questions. Then came my masterstroke. Patricia had continued digging into the legal aspects of my original algorithm registration and made a critical discovery. The licensing agreement I had unknowingly signed when forming Sentinel with Matt had a duration clause. The company had rights to use my core algorithm for 3 years, after which renewal required explicit consent from the original creator, me. That 3-year period was about to expire. Patricia sent a formal notice to Sentinel, per Section 17.3 of the original licensing agreement, rights to utilize Alexander Reed's proprietary algorithm, registration CS 92841-03A, will expire on June 15. Any continued use after this date constitutes intellectual property infringement. The timing was perfect. Sentinel had just announced a major expansion into European markets, with Guardian as their flagship product. They had contracts pending with government agencies and financial institutions across the continent. 2 days after receiving our notice, Matt called me directly, the first contact since that fateful breakfast. "Alex, we need to talk." His voice lacked its usual confidence. "I believe my attorney sent all the necessary documentation," I replied coolly. "Come on, man. This is ridiculous. You can't just pull the rug out from under the company like this." "I'm not doing anything, Matt. I'm simply exercising my legal rights, something you're intimately familiar with. The licensing agreement was buried in boilerplate. You know, neither of us paid attention to that stuff back then. Interesting how legal details matter now that they're affecting you." He sighed heavily. "What do you want, Alex? Money? A position back at Sentinel? Name it." I almost laughed. "I don't want anything from you, Matt. Not anymore. Don't be stupid. We can work something out. The company's valuation is at $120 million now. I can offer you equity, a C-level position. It's too late for that. Much too late. Think about all the people who depend on Sentinel, our employees, our clients. You'd put them at risk out of what, spite? Interesting how you suddenly care about other people. Goodbye, Matt." I hung up and blocked his number. Within days, word leaked to the tech press: Sentinel Security faces existential threat as core technology license expires. Investors panicked. The stock plummeted. European partners put their contracts on hold, waiting to see how the situation would resolve. Matt made increasingly desperate attempts to contact me, through mutual friends, my parents, even showing up at my apartment building, where security turned him away. He offered millions in settlement money, board positions, public recognition as co-founder. I responded to each offer the same way: silence. Meanwhile, Chimera announced their new Aegis security protocol with great fanfare, highlighting its superior performance against the latest threats, precisely the ones causing problems for Sentinel's clients. They didn't mention my involvement, that had been part of our agreement. I preferred to remain in the background this time. The deadline came and went. Sentinel faced an impossible choice: shut down their core product or risk massive legal liability for continued use of my algorithm. They scrambled to develop an alternative, but replicating years of work in weeks was impossible. Client confidence eroded further with each passing day. 3 months later, Sentinel's stock had lost 70% of its value. Major clients were jumping ship, many to Chimera. Matt was forced to lay off half the staff, ironically, starting with the marketing team he'd built, preserving the engineering division I had created as they desperately tried to develop a Guardian replacement. I watched it all from a distance, consulting for various companies, steadily rebuilding my reputation in the industry. I felt no joy in Sentinel's collapse, only a calm sense that balance was being restored. The final blow came when the SEC announced an investigation into Sentinel for potentially misleading investors about their intellectual property rights during their last funding round. Matt had apparently failed to disclose the licensing limitation to the board and investors. Almost exactly 1 year after my termination, I received an email from Sharon Patel, the same lawyer who had sat beside Matt that morning at the cafe. Mr. Reed, Sentinel Security Solutions is prepared to discuss acquisition terms. The board has authorized me to negotiate a full sale of the company assets to you, should you be interested. I forwarded it to Patricia without comment. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers. For a fraction of its former valuation, I now owned what remained of Sentinel, the client relationships, the brand name, the office leases, and most importantly, the team of talented engineers who had built upon my original vision. Matt wasn't present at the signing. According to industry gossip, he had resigned under pressure from the board and was facing multiple shareholder lawsuits. His social media accounts had gone dark. The Tesla was listed for sale. The waterfront condo had a foreclosure notice. On my first day back in the Sentinel offices, now mine, I gathered the remaining employees. Some of you know me, I began. Some don't. But all of you have been building on my original work. I'm not here to assign blame or hold grudges. I'm here because what we created together matters, and I want to see it reach its full potential. I paused, looking at the mixture of hopeful and anxious faces. Starting today, we're rebranding. Sentinel Security Solutions is now Phoenix Security. And we're integrating the Aegis protocol as our core technology. One brave engineer raised her hand. What about Mr. Wilson? Will he be involved? I smiled slightly. No. Mr. Wilson has moved on to other opportunities. Later that afternoon, as I settled into what had once been Matt's corner office, I received a text from an unknown number. You've destroyed everything we built. I hope it was worth it. M.W. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. That evening, I walked through the quiet office, looking at the empty desks that would soon be filled again, the white boards covered with familiar code. I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. I opened my laptop and began to code. Not for revenge, not anymore. For the future. But I did make one small change to the company portfolio, our smallest, most basic security package, the one designed for individual users of minimal importance. I named BETRAYAL.